What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Hopefully you had a good weekend overall, had some fun here, did of course the Spawn cast, then we took a quick look at some of the Jedi Fallen Order stuff, but we're going to go over all of it here today, just get you kind of caught up if you missed that. And then we also took a look at a 32 gigabyte cartridge for the Switch that was kind of interesting to open because it's a little different than I thought it would be. As always, guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure to like button. It does help out. We have a bunch of stuff to go over today. Actually, Labo VR surprisingly has been selling out. In fact, on Amazon it's sold out. We're going to talk a bit about that and why I think that is. And then, of course, the Jedi Fallen Order stuff. And then we have to also talk about Mortal Kombat 11 and the microtransactions that are going to be involved in that game. Because it does sound like there's going to be quite a few reasons, I guess, to buy into some of the currency if you want with real money. So something to just kind of keep in mind there. We're going to start today actually with Control. And Control is interesting because last time we talked about Control, we showed a graph that reminded me of EA with Anthem, of course. It seems like way more work than it should be to figure out what version of the game you are buying with all these deluxe versions and stuff. Well, they seem to have made it even more complicated because now each system, the PS4 and the Xbox One, get their own charts. Here they are. I mean, here's charts for you if you want to see charts when you think about buying a video game. What's interesting about this, though, is it looks like they're going to have exclusive content for the PS4. You can see notably that the PS4's chart is much larger than the Xbox One's chart, and that's because, well, the PS4 will have exclusive missions, mods, items. It's going to be more than just cosmetics, basically. It kind of reminds me of like Destiny, for example, where exclusive content, guns and stuff are going to the PS4. Looks to be the same situation here. Now, there's a good chance that it's like has like a time limit to it, like exclusive time period is what I would assume. But Remedy and Control, with Control, they are definitely trying to get as much money as they can. Epic Store, exclusive items now, digital deluxe versions, it's all over the place. It's worse technically when it comes to buying the game than we saw with EA and Anthem, because now we have a major chart, then we have like a split off for two more charts. You have to figure out systems and platforms. It's too much work. We're just buying a video game here. Oh, and Final Fantasy X 10-2 is out tomorrow on the Switch, and it's going to be interesting when that comes out because, of course, it's going to be interesting to see Final Fantasy X 10-2, for example, on something other than like a Sony platform, not counting Steam, of course. But what's interesting about this is Virtuos is doing the port, and they talked with Edge magazine about a few things when it came to it, and it seems like they are continuing to use these type of, like they're using Final Fantasy X 10-2 to more or less audition for more ports, as you would expect. They want to do a good job so they get more work, and they kind of outline some of the issues they had and kind of how they worked through it. Here's actually a quote from Edge saying, "We put a dedicated team to working on this kind of problem, so it's kind of mixing the two approaches. We have the core porting team solving the main problems, and we have a small technical team to attack individual problems on specific platforms." What do you think they were talking about? Well, it was space on the cartridge. I assume they're talking more about the Eastern release, where it will be all in one cartridge, rather than the Western release, where it's going to just be on one cartridge, and then you have a code for 10-2. Although, who knows, maybe 10 was harder than they thought to squeeze on like a 16 gigabyte cartridge. I feel like they may have been talking about the two games on a 32 gigabyte cartridge, which appears to be happening with the Asia release. So it's interesting to see Virtuos talk more about that, and that they have teams dedicated to smaller issues and the overarching issues and everything. But it sounds like they are set up pretty well for Switch porting. So there you go. Another good studio working towards it. Want to do more ports, so that's only good for Switch owners, as they'll continue probably bringing bigger games than you would assume to the Switch. Oh, and in some funny news, you know how we always find Easter eggs and stuff kind of inside hardware? For example, we saw thanks to all gamers that was in that Pro controller for the Switch. It was kind of imprinted on the board. Of course, the Xbox One X has a Master Chief, I believe, riding a Scorpion in the Xbox One X. Well, it doesn't always turn out to be fanfare and happiness and excitement. Sometimes it turns into ominous, weird messages. This is a really funny set of tweets that you're seeing here. These are for the Oculus Touch. You know those Oculus Touch controls? This is actually Nate Mitchell, who said, "Unfortunately, some Easter egg labels meant for prototypes actually made it onto the internal hardware for tens of thousands of touch controllers. The messages on the final production hardware say, 'This space for rent. The Masons were here. A few dev kits shipped with Big Brother is watching,' and 'Hi, iFixit, we see you.' But those were limited to non-consumer items." So this is kind of funny. I mean, they were just playing around with it in the prototype stuff, I guess just having a laugh, and then it just managed to get out there. So people who take these things apart might look at that and be like, that's weird. Why would it say that in here? Because a lot of times we like to kind of, connect it to the company, like I'm Master Chief riding a Scorpion. That makes sense to me, right? But like for seeing that is very weird. It sounds like they fixed it, or they are fixing it, or they just apologized for it. Who knows? But hey, there you go. You could end up with one of the limited edition Oculus Touch controllers to tell you that Big Brother's watching. Then guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. We're going to start with Labo VR. Now, you may have found it over the weekend or on Friday, but something was very interesting, especially on my end. I had a harder time finding it. I had to go to 4 different stores before I did find it. That included 2 GameStops, a Target, and a Walmart. The third GameStop finally had one. Just one. The other ones at the other stores, for example, at GameStops, were all pre-orders, and it seemed to me like not as many were stocked, or these retailers were a bit more conservative with their orders. Nonetheless, it seems that Labo VR has actually been selling out on Amazon. As you're seeing a tweet here, this is actually from Dr. Serkan Toto, who did mention this, saying Labo VR is sold out on Amazon in the US. Both the starter kit and the full kit are currently only sold by resellers at 2 to 3 times the normal price. So, once again, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking either Labo VR is extremely popular, the most popular we've seen a Labo kit, or there wasn't as much stock made and shipped, or retailers didn't order as much. I kind of look, to be honest, maybe to the retailers just not ordering much, because remember, we talked about a deal not long ago by Target where they were selling Labo kits that were normally, fairly expensive kits, $60, $80. They were getting rid of these things for $20 a piece. I think it was like $19 and some change. So I do wonder if some of these retailers looked at that and said, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't order hundreds of Labo kits and think they're going to sell. Maybe we'll be a bit more careful, and if it sells well, then we'll order a few more. And that's kind of what I think happened here. I don't think there was as big of a rush for the Labo VR as, I don't think it was a standout compared to the other ones, especially when Labo first showed up and there was curiosity and intrigue about it. There's certainly intrigue for Labo VR, but I feel like some of the magic from Labo in general wore off a bit going into this one, and I think it had more to do with stock rather than just demand. Either way, though, it's apparently harder to find it, and 2 to 3 times, if you had just bought it, you could actually made some money, I guess, from it if you wanted to resell it, but Amazon more than likely will get more in. I'm sure Targets and Walmarts and all the other places will get more in. It was just interesting that I had to really run around to find it, and even the GameStops I talked to only got a couple in, and they were mostly for pre-order customers. So it definitely makes you wonder about that. Maybe retailers didn't have as much confidence in Labo as the first time, and they're just kind of adapting and changing their ordering methods. Next up, let's talk about Jedi: The Fallen Order, because at Star Wars Celebration over the weekend, we did get a look at it, I guess. We didn't see any gameplay. They used assets from the game to basically create a cinematic trailer, and that was about it. It was like, a minute or so long. It at least gave us the premise. It introduced us to the character that we'd be playing as, and kind of the world, some of the enemies and everything, and the idea of the game. Something was kind of explained to us anyway, but we just have a better idea of what we're seeing. Now, I will say, the trailer was fun to watch. It was high quality, as we'd expect, and it was overall a good time, I think, and I believe we're going to see actual gameplay at E3. I think they just wanted to show it to the crowd there, of course, have their panel, talk about it a bit more, backstory, and then at E3 we'll have some of the EA. They're not going to have a live stream technically, like one of their big, get a crowd in, live stream everything, but they're still going to have live streams, kind of Treehouse-like is how they described it, where they'll just do gameplay. So they'll probably do Jedi: The Fallen Order. They'll do gameplay of that. They'll probably do gameplay of the new FIFA, the new Madden, all their sports games. I'm sure we'll get gameplay streams. So look to that if you really want to see gameplay. But there were a lot of details to go over for Jedi: The Fallen Order. So first of all, the game will come out November 15th. It's coming out for Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC. And how this works is you play as a Padawan named Cal Kestis, and that's actually played by Cameron Monaghan, who you might know from Gotham, who I know from Gotham as the Joker there. The idea is you've survived Order 66, and as all the other Jedi around you are being eliminated, you are attempting to pretty much blend in, and as they say, not stand out, which is actually pretty cool. It's a good premise, I think, for the game, but it seems that you're pretty much thrown into the events. You've basically been uncovered, and it seems like you're kind of on the run, and you're trying to work your way through that world for an objective that they said they'd tell us a bit more about as we got closer to launch. So it sounds like the story is going to be fairly interesting to play through, which is pretty cool. And what's really interesting is they described the combat with your lightsaber as thoughtful combat. In fact, if you look on Microsoft's site for the description, they mention blocking, parrying, different types of attacks. It sounds like there is a lot of depth when it comes to the combat using your lightsaber. Now, I've been trying to figure out if it's going to be a straight up, like, I guess just level by level based game where you just go straight up. I don't think it's gonna be open world or anything. It's gonna be straight forward narrative driven game, which is fine, because I think we've had enough open world games for a lot of different genres. I'm ready for just a straight up, just a story driven, straightforward, you know, it's some people say interactive movie, but I think it's going to be a much more action-oriented game. I think it's going to be closer to like Jedi Outcast, for example, which is a game that I absolutely love that game, and I would love to see a newer version of it, which is kind of what this sounds like. Now they've introduced new allies, they're going to have iconic locations, new enemy types to fight, puzzles to solve, and that's right, no microtransactions then or added in later. EA has said this on Twitter. Screenshot it just in case they do it later. And we'll keep that in mind. It's hard to trust EA. Trust me, I get it. I don't trust them much either. But it seems like Respawn has some pull, and it seems like they are making the game they want to make. And that's exciting, I think, for all of us. So we'll look forward to E3 to see gameplay. And then, of course, we'll look forward to November 15th to actually get our hands on it. I will be playing it immediately, like as soon as possible. I'll be playing this thing, and I'm really looking forward to it. Next up, let's talk about Mortal Kombat 11 and the microtransactions and in-game currency that will be in the game. Now, this is WB, and as we've seen with games like Shadow of War, for example, they don't have an issue putting in currency that's premium that you buy to then do things in the game. That one was pretty bad, and they did eventually take out some of the artificial grind, which I do have questions for Mortal Kombat 11 when it comes to that. But let's actually talk about some of the in-game currency and the premium currency that you can expect to see in Mortal Kombat 11. Now, they did have a live stream that took place. They do this, I think, every week, and they talk about the game and different things that are happening and new announcements. And they mentioned an in-game currency that would be premium called time crystals. Now, time crystals would be used for different things. Seems mostly cosmetic, but they do have victory, I guess, poses and taunts and stuff, cosmetics in general. And they also have easy fatalities. That's a consumable that will allow you to, well, do fatalities easily. They'll make it so the button prompts aren't as difficult, probably like almost one button, maybe two button fatalities, and that's, I guess, good for people who don't want to try to do all of the combinations or anything. You use a consumable and then you can just do this. But it's interesting to see this. Now, they do say that you don't have to necessarily worry about things being locked behind it that you wouldn't be able to earn in-game. Otherwise, it sounds like you can just earn everything, never buy these time crystals, and you're fine. But I do have questions about kind of the grind that would take place here, because generally when you see these time crystals, usually it's to skip ahead for different parts, right? It's generally, I mean, they call them time crystals, but it's to skip grind, essentially. And I do wonder, after what we saw with Shadow of War, which had an artificial grind towards the end that most people felt, and then felt the need to buy in to get, I guess, to get stronger, to get past that part faster. I'm curious if Mortal Kombat 11 will run into something similar, where things just feel really expensive just because. So it's something to think about there. They did say anything that changes abilities will not be locked behind time crystals. You cannot buy them with time crystals. So we are looking at cosmetics for the most part, things that won't actually affect your gameplay. But still, we'll have to keep an eye on this, because we'll see what kind of grind we have with this. This isn't technically new. I think Mortal Kombat 10 had it. Injustice, I believe, has had it too. So we'll see if they do anything different with Mortal Kombat 11. Then our last bit of news, let's talk about Sony and Destiny, where Sony apparently does not want cross progression with Destiny, and has actually affected it overall with like Bungie and Activision and everything. So this was an interesting quote from Jason Schreier during a podcast. Let's actually check this out, and then we'll kind of go over it a bit. I heard that Bungie wanted to do character transfers for PS4 and PC before Destiny 2 Forsaken came out, but Sony wouldn't allow it. Sony is just like, we want people to associate Destiny with PS4, even if that means screwing over other players. So Sony has been tough when it comes to cross progression. Remember with Fortnite, they even explained it where they don't want basically money to leave the PS4 and go to the Xbox One, or things we bought on the Xbox One, PC, or Switch and then make its way over to the PS4 because they didn't buy it on the PS4. Cross progression specifically here is mentioned about PC, which is odd because Sony's actually been pretty good with crossplay in PC. They actually have, I believe, the most crossplay games with PC. I mean, just in general, but they're all with like PC. So it is weird to hear that they didn't want anything to do with cross progression there. They just want it to be associated with PlayStation, which actually when Destiny first came out, they did a good job with that because there were a lot of people who didn't even think it came out on the Xbox. So I guess with Destiny 2, they wanted to continue that trend. They didn't want anything about, oh, you can take your stuff to the PC. No, Destiny 2 is basically a PlayStation game. Although it runs better on the PC, obviously, 60 frames and all of that. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to see. Now, it's hard to say if it's lightened up since then with things like Fortnite and Rocket League now just having full crossplay. So we'll see. I'm more curious going into next generation with Sony if their stance on crossplay, cross progression, everything changes across the board, especially since we're restarting. So 0-0 going into 2021, I guess, with the next gen. So maybe Sony will feel the need to change it up a little bit. We'll see. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. Enjoyed this video, guys. Hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is Labo VR selling out. Let me know if you picked it up, if you had a hard time getting it, or maybe you went to like your local store, whether it's a Best Buy, Target, GameStop, Walmart, and they had like tons of them. Because I just didn't see that, and I'm curious anyone else's experience buying it. And then what do you think about Jedi: The Fallen Order? Were you hoping for gameplay and you're a little disappointed just to see a cinematic trailer? Or did that trailer get you really hyped, looking towards E3 for gameplay, and then of course the release in November? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.